Hey everybody, Alex Kazora, SteelersDepot.com, back with some Pittsburgh Steelers tape breakdown and analysis. Talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line, the elephant in the room. The Steelers quarterback's Kenny Pickett was as good as the Steelers offensive line was bad in Saturday's win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. A lot of discussion about why the O-line is struggling as much as they are. There's a variety of reasons for that, of course, but I want to talk about today new offensive line coach Pat Meyer, what he's teaching, and why the Steelers offensive line looks uncomfortable adjusting to Meyer's philosophy. I'm going to try to be as nuts and bolts as possible and really adhere to what Pat Meyer's pass protection philosophy is. Ultimately, players have to do what the coaches tell and teach them to do, and I think there's an adjustment period as this team works with a new offensive line coach. I'm going to put a link in the description to a coaching clinic breakdown and recap that I did during the offseason of Pat Meyer, really explaining in about an hour-long presentation his pass protection philosophy. So I'm really focused on what Meyer generally is teaching and how that is applicable to what we're seeing on tape. So with that long-winded intro out of the way, let's get into the tape. The overall conclusion I'm at right now is that Pittsburgh is just uncomfortable trying some of the new techniques, and that's kind of been confirmed and spoken to more broadly by some of the Steelers offensive linemen. So first example here, one of many we'll show, I want you to focus in on right guard James Daniels, who has not had a good summer, not had a good camp at all, and I think he's a guy especially struggling with that adjustment, looks really uncomfortable. So the way that Pat Meyer teaches things, essentially, if the center's sliding away from you, which Mason Cole is on this play, in terms of how you set this defensive lineman, it's based on, is he on your body or off your body? And what that means is on your body is defined by if the defensive lineman's inside foot is to the inside of the guard's outside foot, that is on your body. In this case, the 3-tech, his inside foot is to the outside of the guard's outside foot. So he is considered off your body. And the way that Pat Meyer wants to set that, they're relatively similar, but just a flat set overall. We're not going to attack and go forward. Meyer's overall philosophy is to be very aggressive in your pass set, attacking and making, and this is a key phrase, burst significant contact, but we're going to take a flat set here if you're James Daniels. So I'm going to run this thing through finally, and you see that initially Daniels taking that more flat set, but one thing I think he does wrong, I think there's two issues here on this play. One, he backs up a little bit here, and it's a little tough to tell because it happens so fast, but he initially sets 1-2, and then you watch him back up just a little bit with that left foot, and he starts to catch the defense lineman that's number 1 overall pick, Travon Walker, and that's a no-no for Pat Meyer. You want to set flat there and be aggressive. The second thing he does wrong is, and again, that goes back to the key phrases, he does not make first significant contact against Walker, and you can see Walker really control this block the whole way through. That's in part because Daniels took a step back and was more passive than what he should have been, according to what Pat Meyer teaches. And so here, you see Walker get that long arm into his chest, and Daniels not able to execute a good punch here. So to kind of run this thing through a little more slowly, the initial step 1-2, then backing up a little bit. Daniels' hands are just too wide here, so he's not really getting into the chest of the defensive lineman. Walker's the guy who ultimately controls this block. You see that right here. There is no burst significant contact made against Travon Walker, and that pushes Daniels back, who's not even really using a hop step too much to try to anchor and stall out that bull rush. You see that maybe a little bit late here in the rush, but overall, that's Daniels not really adhering to the Meyer philosophy in terms of that good initial punch, making that first contact, and taking a flat set overall. And so you kind of see from the aerial view, he does hop step to stall that out very late there, but that pocket's collapsing pretty good by the time Mitch Trubisky throws it complete to Chase Claypool at least. But overall, James Daniels not adhering to the Pat Meyer philosophy. Next example, and I want you to watch in particular left tackle Dan Moore Jr. and left guard Kevin Dotson. And one new kind of philosophy that Meyer has is you're going to see the guards helping the tackles a lot more this year to the center slide side. And so Mason Cole sliding to his left or right here. And in those situations, often the guard's going to get his eyes to the tackle, in this case to right the end, I believe that's Josh Allen, and help out the offensive tackle. So I run this thing through. Dotson really not doing a good job there. He's very late to help out Dan Moore, and that creates pressure on this play. Moore has his own issues we'll talk about here in just a moment, but this is on his body here, but because it's a center slide, you're going to kind of drag in, make sure that defensive tackle is not getting upfield and penetrating. But with the center coming over, Dotson needs to get his eyes basically right here to help out the left tackle, Dan Moore. And I'm not even sure what Dotson's doing here with this. Again, this is not the way Meyer's going to teach and coach this kind of stuff. Cole's got this one well enough at this point, and so Dotson very late to help out Dan Moore, and that is Josh Allen there, who bull rushes through and gets pressure on Trubisky, who has to check it down, and Benny Snell drops the football. So that's Kevin Dotson. Now looking at Dan Moore on this play, and again, his hands have been really bad in both the preseason games. And again, we'll go back to the phrase, and Pat Meyer uses it endlessly, burst significant contact, and he does not make good burst significant contact here. Overall, I think his set is okay, I guess. Typically, you want maybe more of an aggressive set overall, but again, the punch here from Dan Moore, just not good enough. His hands are outside. Allen's able to get into his chest, and Allen's the one making that better and more impactful burst significant contact here, and able to really leverage and get under Dan Moore and create that power that causes Moore to lose his block pretty badly. But again, Kevin Dotson needs and should be able to provide help there, and he does not. With a one tech here, center sliding, Dotson needs to be able to get his eyes to Dan Moore quicker. That does not absolve the issues that Dan Moore has here, but those are two issues on this play that lead to a negative outcome for the Steelers offense. I want to talk a little more about Dan Moore here, and what Pat Meyer teaches, generally speaking, is independent hands. It's less of the more, so to say, old school two-handed punch, and it's more of a high-low punch where you're working each hand independently of each other. It's not that two-hand strike overall. With Dan Moore, I've seen a little bit of that, but I've seen a lot of two-hand punches, and that's gotten him into some trouble this year. So this is early in the game. I'm working against the right defensive end, Josh Allen, and you're going to see that two-hand punch. And the reason why Pat Meyer generally does not like to see that is if you punch with both hands and you miss with both hands. If you're punching with one hand, you still have another hand free that may be able to punch and repunch and keep you in the fight. So he tries to punch here. He punches high. Allen's able to dip under that and dip and rip through. And then Moore's in big trouble at that point. And so Moore's really not used the independent hands as much. And I think he's kind of needing to adjust to some of that stuff and more comfortable with the two-hand punch. But it's gotten him into some trouble this year, and he loses this rep pretty badly to Josh Allen. One last look at it. Again, the two-hand punch right there. Misses, whiffs, and at that point, if you don't have your hands as the offensive lineman, you don't really have much of anything. I don't care really how good your feet are. Your feet need to stay in the fight, but hand use and hand placement punch are the most important part of offensive line play. One last thing I want to note here. A good rep from Kendra Green. Not a great game overall for Kendra Green. I would essentially call this head up, the defensive tackle on Kendra Green. A little inside shade here, but basically if you're head up or this kind of shade, Pat Meyer wants you to take basically no real set at all. Just be really, plant your feet and just anchor. There's not going to be really any sort of post-step movement or anything like that. And so just a good flat step here from Kendra Green. Good first significant contact overall. And he has the strength to hold on to this bull rush here and stall it out. It doesn't always look the prettiest, doesn't have to against the bull, but that's a nice set there from Kendra Green to win this particular rep. All right, here's where it starts to get really ugly, and this is some of the new philosophy and teachings that Pat Meyer has. So this particular example, Mason Cole, the center, is going to be sliding away to the left side here, and so James Daniels is 1v1 against a defensive tackle here. This is a D tackle that is on his body, his inside foot, to the inside of Daniels' outside foot, so we call that on James Daniels' body, and that's when Pat Meyer wants the guard to take the most aggressive set possible. Really, you come forward about 2 to 4 inches with your initial steps there to be really flat, not even flat, but forward, aggressive, and again, making that first significant contact. Daniels tries that here, but it does not work well overall. So watch it here. Watch those first 2 steps. You'll see it better when we look at the top-down view of him coming forward a bit, but that initial punch there is poor as the defensive tackle counters to the outside, and Daniels' feet really go dead here and gives up the pressure. But that is probably a set that I'm guessing Daniels did not have to do last year in Chicago throughout his time with the Bears, and he's probably just uncomfortable with that really going forward and not, being a little more passive and backing up and making sure that you're not getting beat here. But let's look at this from the aerial view and watch those first 2 steps. This is an on-body set here, really wanting to come forward and aggressive from James Daniels. So yeah, those first two steps, they come forward just a little bit. It's not going to be 2 yards, but it's going to be a forward attacking set here. He's going to punch the two-hand punch. I don't know if I love that either, and he gets beat here because he can't mirror and he can't be able to slide laterally here as a defensive tackle counters against that ultra aggressive set. And so I think Daniels just has to learn that, ideally you win and win early. That's kind of Meyer's philosophy, but you're going to have to adjust because you're not always going to win. I think those sets work best against power rushes, bull rushes, things like that. They're going to be more of an issue against more finesse moves in terms of spins and outside rushes and things like that. And so that's going to be the trick overall. And again, I think the hands are a little too wide here from Daniels, not really getting a good punch overall, but he gets his hands knocked down, or almost knocked down, but the D-tackle kind of rips through here, and Daniels is trying to recover the whole entire way. The whole pocket collapses here as well, but really focusing in on James Daniels with that most aggressive on-body set. I think that's something where Daniels does not look comfortable right now in this new system. Two other quick notes here. Pittsburgh really struggled in this game against Jacksonville's twists and games and stunts, and so just watching Kendra Green and Dan Moore here just struggle to pass things off. They recognize it well. Green does not squeeze that gap enough and kind of creates that penetration, so that's really probably more on Kendra Green than it is going to be on Dan Moore here, because they do recognize and attempt to pass this stunt off, but you see that space there. You don't want that space. You want those guys hip to hip so that D-tackle can't penetrate and squeeze through, and Green gets blown up here on this play. Also, just real quick, I was just kind of playing this play through. I just realized this live. I've not seen this before. Watch Pat Meyer. That's the offensive line coach right here, Pat Meyer. And he does not look too happy with how things are going, and nor should he, because this was a bad rep overall by this offensive line. Very similar to what we just watched with James Daniels, Kendra Green has the same issue here. Again, center sliding away, Mason Cole sliding to his right, Kendra Green an on-body set here. Defensive tackle is on his body for this play, and so we're going to take the most aggressive set possible, trying to come forward. And again, what happened to Daniels basically happens to Kendra Green here, and because that center is sliding away, there is no help here to the inside because the center is going to be coming away on this play. So Green taking an aggressive set, trying to go forward a little bit, misses with his punch. The D-tackle is able to swim over that and gets immediate path to the quarterback here on this play. And so again, against the bull rushes and the long arms, I think these sets are more effective. I saw that in the Seattle game as well. There was one play where John LeGlue got beat really bad on a spin move because the D-tackle countered. And so that might be a potential flaw in the Pat Meyer system. But Kendra Green trying to do what's taught. He's trying to trust the technique, but just probably uncomfortable because this is new. It is different than how old offensive line coach Adrian Clem taught it. And so there's going to be an adjustment period and growing pains along the way. And how much better will it get? I mean, that's an open question. But again, watching Green set here, on body set, see how he's, he's going forward. You see the rest of the line here, they're backing up a little bit overall. Green's not giving any ground. That's good. That's what he's being taught. The two-hand punch, again, do you want to work independent hands? I don't know exactly how Meyer may teach that in that moment. He's generally a proponent of independent hand punches. But you have to keep your feet moving as well, especially when these guys start to wise up to how they're going to set you. These defensive linemen, they're going to watch tape. They know how these sets go. If I know how the linemen are setting, I can promise you the defensive tackle is going to know the general philosophy and how these guys are being set against. And so how do you deal with more finesse moves and counters on these aggressive sets? That's something that Pittsburgh's going to have to solve and do a better job at in terms of being able to slide and mirror and be able to work your feet. I think Daniels and Green had the issue here of their feet really getting stuck here on their punch and losing that early. And again, Pat Meyer's whole philosophy is basically win early in the rep, but the consequence of that is if you do not win early in the rep, you're going to probably lose that rep and lose it pretty badly, and that's exactly what happens here, and Green gets his quarterback, Kenny Pickett, hit. I don't mean to pick on him too much. I'm going to talk about right tackle John LeGlue, 77 here. He's primarily played guard, a little bit of center this summer. He played tackle more in college, a little bit more last year, so he hasn't gotten a lot of work at right tackle. But this is a guy that just is not using the technique that Pat Meyer espouses. And so we're going to watch this one here. Again, there's no first significant contact. There's too much giving ground on this play and really catching this rush too much overall. The initial set is fine. In some cases, and I haven't really seen it much so far this year, I'm kind of been looking for it, is Meyer will ask his tackles or have the ability for his tackles to do what's called a chase down set, which is a really aggressive set against a widely aligned pass rusher to really come forward and be super, super aggressive, almost, running towards the pass rusher instead of really being passive and trying to catch a guy with a running start. That really can't happen here. Essentially, what the tackle has to look at is, on some of these wider aligned defensive linemen, is there a threat? Is the 3-tech a threat? Is the defensive tackle a threat? And here, with him being the 3-tech on this play, there's a chance that he's going to penetrate here, or they're going to stunt or run some sort of game. And so you have to take a vertical set here. That's one of the few times where Pat Meyer says you really can't be that aggressive with your set. If you're the tackle and there's a threat potential to you, which is generally going to be a 3-tech, maybe there's some other weird alignment with a 4-tech or a 5-tech or something kind of crazy like that. So you're going to drag hand to the inside here, and I'll show that here in a second, with a vertical set to make sure there is no threat, no twist, no game being run, and then you're going to, make first significant contact against the pass rusher. So I'm going to run this thing through. 3-tech's a threat here. In this case, Leglue cannot be ultra aggressive, so we're going to drag hand to the inside here, to that inside B gap, make sure there is no game or penetration, anything happening here. Once there is not, and that's clear, you're going to get eyes to the left defensive end in this play. But overall, his base here is a mess. He's not making good contact. The base is just, looking really bad on this play. He's catching this one the whole way through, and he gets run through really easily here. So Leglue just looks a mess. Technically, the initial set here, the vertical set, is fine. But again, he's not making that first significant contact. I know I've said that phrase a million times. I'll say it a million more, because that is, in a couple of words, how Pat Meyer teaches things, for better or for worse. Should note, by the way, Trent Scott, who's been coached by Pat Meyer his whole career, really good trap here, facing the bull rush here by the right defensive end, just knocked down that arm. I remember Alejandro Villanueva had a really good trap move that would really be able to defeat and counter some of those bull rushes. So just watch it here from Trent Scott really briefly. Nice job here. Swing down through the joint, through the elbow, and knock that defensive lineman to the ground. That was a really good throw by Mason Rudolph, by the way, to Connor Hayward. Could not haul that one in, but that's a separate point. All right, I've beaten this offensive line up probably enough for one video. Here's one last example to go out on some sort of good note of how it's supposed to look. I talk about a lot of things and how it didn't look as good as it should have been, and the way it was coached and the way that it's drawn up there on the whiteboard. Here's how it's supposed to look for the Steelers offensive line. And watch left guard Kendra Green and left tackle Trent Scott. We'll talk about each here on this play again. On your body here for Kendra Green, so we're going to take a really aggressive set overall, with Hassenauer ultimately sliding away. And Green does a really good job here to make that first significant contact, to win with his hands. Good placement, good punch, and controls that block early while not conceding any sort of ground overall. So watch the punch here. Hands better inside. He's in control of this block the whole way through, and a little hop step there to make sure he's able to kind of stall that one out. But a really good rep. I think overall, Kendra Green has done a better job facing 1-techs than he has 3-techs. I'm not entirely sure why that is. Maybe it's more of a speed thing, worried about losing the outside. I really couldn't tell you why for sure, but I've seen Green do a better job against guys aligned to his inside gap as opposed to the outside gap there as a 3-tech. So a good set here, good first significant contact. That's the way that you want it to be, and that's a good rep there overall from Kendra Green. Unfortunately, did not see enough of those in Saturday's win over Jacksonville. Last thing to note, watching Trent Scott, the left tackle. Scott was coached by Pat Meyer both with the Chargers and the Panthers, and now he's followed him to Pittsburgh, and that's not a real big shock overall. So that's a guy that very much understands and has kind of been, grown up in the Pat Meyer system, quote unquote. And so he knows this better. He probably looks more comfortable, and he does because of that. And so I'm going to watch Trent Scott here on this play. I think I've slowed things down. VLC gets a little weird on me sometimes here, but let me fix that. Trent Scott's working independent hands on this play. This is kind of really the model of what Pat Meyer is looking for. Not a two-hand punch. We're going to work our hands independently and separately. So watch this thing through. Watch how the right hand hits first and the left hand hits second. And, those can be different things. They can be, high-low and things like that. But that is not a two-hand punch here from Trent Scott. And he makes that first significant contact right there with the right hand and then back with the left hand. And does a better job here. Repunch late there to kind of reset his hands. Maybe they're a little too far to the outside. But overall, that is kind of more of what Pat Meyer is looking to see. And so right hand right there. Left hand maybe a little outside. So he's going to be able to take that left hand and right there repunch to get back really inside of that inside number here. That's a much better job by Trent Scott. That's more of what Pat Meyer is looking for. Scott, to me, overall, has not played particularly well this camp, but technically speaking, he understands what Pat Meyer wants to do more because he spent more time with him. So that's understandable there. So that's the independent hand aspect of play that Pat Meyer is looking for. That's a good rep there from Trent Scott. And honestly, while I think he's not going to be a guy that I want to see playing on Sundays, Trent Scott may make this roster because technically he is in agreement and alignment with what Pat Meyer is teaching this offensive line right now. So that will wrap up today's video. I know it was longer and me talking and maybe not showing as many clips and slowing things down even more, but I really wanted, like I said earlier, to get to the nuts and bolts of what Pat Meyer is teaching and why this offensive line is struggling. And again, that's for probably multiple reasons. There's a talent issue, I'm sure. There's an experience issue. There's a newness issue of another offensive line coach, the second in 2 years, third in 3 years. I do think it'll get better. I think these are predictable growing pains of a new offensive line coach teaching stuff that's probably different than how this team's been taught in the past, different than how Adrian Clem and Chris Morgan taught things last year. So I think, things will get better. Guys will get more comfortable. The question really is just always how much better will it get? And that's really hard for me to say right now. Will they go from being really awful to just slightly better than awful, or will they go to average? I really couldn't tell you. But I think overall, the big issues we're seeing right now, some of these really ugly reps, and make no mistake, they are really ugly reps, are because of some of the new teachings here that Pittsburgh's trying to adjust to. And it's got to get better. It's got to get better fast. And I do think Meyer's overall philosophy has its value, but it has its downsides as well. Everything has upsides and downsides and pros and cons at this level. So just wanted to explain some of the issues along the offensive line, some of the minor stuff, some of the big picture stuff. Have to do a better job with first significant contact, working on your sets, winning early, working independent hands. I think Daniels looks uncomfortable. I think Moore is using too many two-handed punches. I think Green struggles with off-body sets. I think Dotson's got to do a better job just understanding some of the basic stuff that Pat Meyer is wanting this offensive line to do. I think Mason Cole has done well. Overall, I think Chuck Wilmer-Corfor has been the best offensive lineman on this team. I think Trent Scott may make this team because he understands what Pat Meyer is asking him to do. So those are my overall thoughts and explanations for the Steelers' offensive line struggles. If you guys could, please like this video, subscribe to my channel. I would appreciate that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll talk to you soon.